Distribution provided by Cloud Sigma, the cloud that adapts to you.
Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by audible.com, a leading provider of spoken audio information and entertainment. Listen to audiobooks whenever and wherever you want. Visit audible.com/twist for your free audiobook. And by Squarespace, an all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create a professional website and now an online store. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase on new accounts, go to squarespace.com and use offer code TWIST7.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Back on the program, Joel Spolsky. I introduced you like 3 times, but you've been on the program before. Hey, we're having a conversation.
Hey.
How you doing?
How's it going, Jason? Thanks for coming to New York.
Yeah, you know, my old hometown.
Yeah.
It's great coming here. So much activity, huh?
I know. Yeah, we're not going to talk about Tumblr.
No. But congratulations to Tumblr, David Karp.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Good work.
That's got to be a huge moment for New York, though. I mean, $1 billion exit.
That's
When's the last time?
Not the first one.
Well,
Everybody's like,
DoubleClick would be
DoubleClick.
the one other. Razorfish.
Yeah.
So DoubleClick and Razorfish from round 1 definitely were
GeoCities? No, that wasn't New York.
That was
Never mind.
Beverly Hills, Los Angeles. And actually, the first name of GeoCities was Beverly Hills Internet. And I met Dave Bonette when he was coming out here to meet with Jerry Colonna and Fred Wilson of then Flatiron Partners. But yes, such activity here.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. WeWork is like this whole building now.
Yeah. And when you started here in the 90s doing software, there were not...
Less. Yeah.
There
Well, there was sort of the
less.
first .com boom.
But you started before the first .com boom, right?
I started
95?
after. Well, I mean, I got here in 94.
Uh-huh.
I worked at Viacom New Media. You had to work for like a media company in those
You worked
days.
at Viacom New Media? I didn't
Yeah.
know that, really.
Yeah. Viacom,
Making
yeah.
CD-ROMs?
Yeah, I was actually working on their first websites for companies like MTV, Blockbuster, Comedy Central. They all made these sort of early versions. And it was like the very first MTV website that, other than, well, it was a long story with Adam there. But
Adam Curry bought MTV.com.
Yeah, and he was running an FTP server, I think, and then
Yeah.
they sued him to get it back, which is bizarre.
Yeah.
Anyway. So that was sort of early pioneering web work that was being done here, but it was being done in these big corporations.
Yeah. And you started Fog Creek when?
Fog Creek started in 2000.
What was
So,
the
crash?
first product you guys built? And why did you start it?
We started it because everywhere I looked, software developers were getting treated really badly. And at the same
My, how the tide has turned.
Yes. It's actually, that was a part of the goal, which is it was surprising to me that software developers were in such high demand, and yet they were treated very poorly everywhere they went.
Why do you think that? Why were they treated poorly?
They were seen as typists by the business people that were hiring them. And that was mostly an East Coast phenomenon. Obviously, the West Coast, they'd figured out that...
Was that like
engineering
Wall
skills-
Street just diminished their work?
Yeah, I guess so. And the people in the entertainment industry that was here in the publishing industry all saw it as sort of, they saw that as like,
IT.
Like IT, exactly.
Because it was all back end back then. In fairness, it was plumbing. It wasn't forward facing in a lot of cases.
Maybe. Let's say. I mean,
It started to become forward facing when the internet happened, right? I mean,
Right. And I feel like software development is really, inventing the future. I feel like it's the heart of everything amazing that humanity is doing right now is developing software that does interesting things.
It is. And what do you think the tipping point was in culture when people started seeing developers as, really defining the future as this very precious commodity and even hero worship of developers?
Wired, like that era, the original Wired magazine. I just realized the other day that Wired magazine started before the World Wide Web.
It did, 93, 94?
Yeah, hard to believe, but I actually remember the first article about Mosaic, as it was then
Yeah, Mosaic was
called.
on the cover.
Yeah. But the first time that was covered in Wired magazine.
94 or something when Mosaic came out.
Pretty late, actually.
But people don't remember. I mean, when the browser came out, it didn't support images, and everything had the same background color, gray.
Yeah, it was hard to see that was going to be an amazing, sort of the amazing future of everything. And there were sort of a lot of things that people thought might become the internet besides the World Wide Web, like CompuServe, AOL, MSN.
And
the AT&T Lotus Notes network.
Sure, Lotus Notes was fantastic.
Yeah,
right?
and AT&T was going to run a public Lotus Notes network that anybody could sign up for
Right.
and make databases on. And you could have United Airlines could have a database for buying
Customers
a plane ticket
or
on
something.
United Airlines.
Lotus Notes. I mean, you have to give what's his name. Reazi.
Reazi,
A lot of
yes.
credit for Lotus Notes. I mean,
yeah.
it's sort of, people look at it as like a laughing stock now.
No, I don't think so. I think it was.
It was so cutting edge. Why
Right.
was it so cutting edge?
Well, it was email, and it was sold into enterprises as having all these features. And the truth is, it was sort of an intranet / email / freeform database.
Right.
By freeform, I mean what we sometimes call a ragged write database, where you store documents instead of a rigid grid.
Yeah.
Like everything has the same fields. But in Notes, kind of like the new NoSQL app like MongoDB, there was this idea that you store a document and some things might have an age and other things might have a height. Some things might have an age and a height. Some
Right.
things might have neither. And so you could just sort of throw all kinds of records in there and it would keep track of them for
It
you.
was like my first programming job was building Lotus Notes databases at Sony in 1993, 92.
In New York.
In New York.
Olafson.
I remember when Olaf was
yeah.
and I was installing 1.0 on OS 2.
Could be.
Yeah, it was OS 2, which was
OS2, probably version 2.0.
IBM's operating
It was
system.
a joint IBM Microsoft operating system that was going to be the future. And Lotus Notes, I think, got bought by enterprises, and they used it for email, really. And they could have used it for more advanced things. Most of them were just using it as an email app.
I built an expense report app. I built a press database where you could it would pull in from LexisNexis all the news stories that mentioned Sony and then organize them.
Right.
And you could like open and close them and comment on them, and it was just like it was used by the top people, Tommy Mottola and all the top,
So you can see how that was
Sony
sort of an
phone.
early, people were starting to get this feeling of what Bill Gates used the words information at your fingertips to describe this idea that you can turn to your computer and get information
Right.
by typing something, and it would come to you from various places. And that was a revolution at some point, right? Because before that, computers were, isolated, alone, not connected to anything.
Hey everybody, what a great episode we're having. And this episode is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace. It's such a great product. You can create your own Squarespace in just minutes. I've done it. We use it here. And everything is beautiful. Look at this beautiful Get Started page here. Create your own Squarespace. Websites, domains, commerce, mobile, 24/7 support. Those are the things you need to know. You can create a beautiful website. There's tons of templates. You can get your domain name signed up quickly and easily, or transfer it quickly and easily. You now can do commerce. Think about that. You used to have like one person do your hosting and another person do your commerce. Now it's all in one package at Squarespace for one price. So if you're trying to sell stuff online, and my wife was going through this with her business, and she's like, oh, I got to get this thing set up on this side, and then I got to get a Squarespace site. Now it's all one product, and of course it's all mobile, and it just works. Instantly create an online store and have beautiful calendars to share events, right? Because everybody has a calendar associated. So here, this new feature of calendars is amazing. So let's say you had an events business, or let's say you had a yoga studio, all those small businesses, or let's say you were doing This Week in Startups and you needed to have a calendar. Boom, you can just set up a calendar. It works. It's easy, beautiful, easy. And man, the commerce is great. And look how gorgeous these sites are. That's the one thing I'm always taken by. Just completely gorgeous. And they made everything. Look at this, Truth and Lies. You can go in and you get these great T-shirts. And it's just beautiful. When you see a beautiful site like this, that gives you confidence in spending money. It gives you confidence in the brand you're working with. Drop everything and go ahead and sign up for Squarespace. Use the promo code. Go to squarespace.com and try it out for free. No credit card required. They're that confident. And it starts at only $8 a month. I think it should start at $8 a month. I'll be honest. It's worth that much. There's so much going on here. But hey, this is the route they've chosen. They've chosen to be available to everybody at a very affordable price. Listen, what do I know? It's probably a great move on their part. But I would tell you, this is what used to cost $8,000 a month. And then people right now are currently charging $800, $500 a month for this kind of service. And you can get it for $8 a month from Squarespace. They're going to take over the world. They're in the process of doing so. If you decide to keep your site after that, use the code TWIST7. Squarespace, everything you need to create an exceptional website. And I agree with them. And you know what? We all have this issue where people in our lives are like, oh, you work in, my aunt, you work in this is literally like a phone call from my mother. Jason, your aunt is going to call you. She's got a friend who's making a website. Oh, really? Okay, thanks, Mom. I'm like, Mom, I don't build websites for a living. I build businesses. But she was your aunt, and she used to take you to the pool, and she would change your dirty diapers. She'd wipe your butt. Mom, I don't need to know she wiped my ass when I was a kid. But okay, I'll take the call. Then I take the call. Well, my friend, Margaret, she's starting a website. She has a business, and it's in the town, and it's a knitting crafting business. Oh, okay, stop. Tell her to go to squarespace.com, tell her to sign up, and then tell her to call me. And then you know what I get? She went to Squarespace, it worked, and I don't even get the phone call. Because she's so thankful. She's emailed me, oh yeah, it all worked. No tech support for me. Thank you. And thank you for wiping my bottom when I was like 3 years old. 2, I don't know. Who knows when I got out of diapers. Listen, anyway. Right now, Squarespace is like, we paid for a commercial when Jason's going to talk about when he was a kid and getting his butt wiped. But the truth is, it all comes full circle. People ask you for favors, and the biggest favor you can do is getting Squarespace. Get Squarespace, 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 and thank at Squarespace. And I thank Squarespace. They've been one of the longest sponsors of this program. And this is a running theme. The sponsors and partners on This Week in Startups and Launch, they never leave. Why? Because we use their products and we love them, and we get them great customers, and we get them great buzz around their products. And you, my audience, my loyal This Week in Startups ones, I love you guys so much. I really love you guys because you are my army. The Twist army is so strong because they tweet, thank you at Squarespace. They're like, oh, what an amazing episode with at Kara Swisher. They know to use at Kara Swisher, so she sees that they appreciated the episode. And then they're like, oh, thank you at Squarespace, and whoever else was a partner on that program. And that lets these partners know that we're a serious business over here at This Week in Startups. We drive people into products, and we only drive them into the best products. No e-cigarette companies, no nonsense on this program. We turn down probably 2 out of 3 partners. We only accept the partners who make great products, and Squarespace is at the top of that list. I'm so proud to have them as a sponsor. Okay, all right, enough. Enough about Squarespace. They're awesome. You know I love them. Let's look at this one more site. Look at these shoes, huh? 550 beans for these shoes? I kind of like these men's shoes. $545? I'd buy these. Let me take a look at these men's shoes for a second. ABK Leathercraft, Henry Street. $545. Well, look how beautiful those are. All right, I'll buy these. I'll buy these right now on the show. All right, no, I'm not going to take you through it, but I'm going to buy these shoes just because they're using Squarespace. Squarespace. Don't be a disgrace. Get Squarespace. Let's get back to the program. Gates did get so many things right during that period of time in terms of he had the ideas.
Yeah.
He had the idea for the tablet. He understood the internet.
Yeah,
he had the wallet.
Get credit, really.
He doesn't get any credit for any of that, but he was working on the Microsoft Wallet.
Yeah.
The tablet.
You only get credit for
and
getting
the internet.
timing exactly right.
And executing.
Like knowing that these things are inevitable, you don't really get points for. I think of YouTube as a classic example. I had a friend who started something called Earth Noise that was just like YouTube. It was a company here in New York, probably 5 years before. Well, 2000. I don't know when YouTube.
Was it mobile clips or just any video clip?
Any video clip, you could upload them. Most people couldn't. They had a service which never went anywhere where you could mail in your Betamax tapes or whatever they were in those days, because people just it wasn't digitized yet.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It was 1999, 2000, and really it was just exactly like YouTube. There was a basic editor. You could share it with other people. So the idea that all these people would upload these videos of their life and the whole vlogging idea. They had it all way too early. They raised $8 million from AOL Ventures or whatever it was called, Greenhouse.
Well, how do you, the AOL Greenhouse. How do you know that your idea is too early?
I'm not really sure. You might just think that it's a dumb idea.
Or other people might.
This is sort of a big risk. You have an idea, it fails because it's too early, and other people will be afraid of doing that because everybody who's smart will say, oh, didn't those guys just try that a year ago and it failed? And sometimes something takes an extra year or two to come back before it's actually possible.
Which is a nice segue into Stack Exchange and Stack Overflow, of course, the first of your knowledge Q&A databases, because you saw Yahoo Answers.
Right.
You saw, what was the...
Experts Exchange was
Experts Exchange is terrible.
Yeah.
Paid Q&A. But what was the one? Aardvark, Answers.com. You saw a lot of people, work on that.
Yeah.
And nobody really got it right until yourself and I would say Quora. Is that fair?
I think we're all doing different things. Like every single company in the space is a little bit different.
Yeah. But you were watching all that activity. I even did a little bit with Mahalo having an Answers product. What do you think it was that you got right that everybody else got wrong?
I think I like to think of, now I'm going to sound conceited. Do you remember the IBM PC?
No, listen, you got something right. I'll find something you got wrong later.
Okay.
But for now, I give you permission to explain to us why you got it right.
We were the IBM PC of Q&A for programmers and geeks and stuff like that. And by IBM PC, I mean the IBM PC came out at the tail end of, I don't know, 1,000 little home personal computers that
Sure.
different people tried to launch.
Eagle.
Yeah, I mean, there were just a million little variants of, from the TRS-80 and the Apple II were reasonably successful, but there were
Everything
all
in
kinds
between.
of variations and packs
Decks
and whatever.
Yeah.
And what the IBM PC did when they came out is they actually kind of took the best of breed from all the ones that were out there. There was not really a single thing in the IBM PC that was an innovation. They just had the best processor of anybody that was out there. They had the best video card of anybody that was out there. They had the best floppy disk. They had the best version of BASIC. They had
3
the best,
expansion slots.
They had nice expansion slots, right? They had the
That was a
ability
novel
to do-
concept, huh?
yeah, I think they might have had 5 even in the first
was
one.
even
but
5,
they-
you're
but
right.
some of them were used. Like by the time you opened it up,
Yeah, it was like
there
it
was
came
one
with
was already
2 for
handling
your-
your floppy disk and
Yeah.
one was your memory or something.
Yeah.
But you could it had expansion slots. It had a full keyboard. So,
A touch type keyboard too, a clicky
yeah,
one.
so it could do word processing.
Right.
It had 80 columns, so it could do kind of, in those days, WYSIWYG was just 80 columns.
Right.
Which, the Apple II only had 40 columns of text. So by synthesizing sort of all of those things, they made something that was sort of better than all the others.
And you did that with Stack Overflow.
With Stack Overflow, we took voting from Reddit. We took features from Xbox. We took the badges from Xbox.
Tags.
We took tags from Flickr. We took, and Delicious, I guess, gets some credit for that.
Yeah.
So essentially, there was nothing really that we completely invented. We just sort of kind of best of breeded and combined them all.
And that is a very viable product development strategy, is just study what works in other verticals and
Yeah.
bring it to another vertical and just do it well.
I don't know if it always works. I mean, at the time, I was astonished that nobody else had built this, and I was confident that it was going to show up at any minute. And I didn't even bother making it because I was sure somebody was going to make it at any given time. And, like a year later, I'm looking around, they still haven't made it. And I was like, screw this, I better
What
make
were
it.
people using before that? Just IRC? Or
No,
message boards?
well, all right. So there were a lot of message boards, and the message boards were all usually specific to one particular technology.
Python,
So
whatever.
like Java Ranch, for example, for the Java program, it's still around. I mean, it's not a bad site, but it's a discussion forum at its heart. There was an earlier generation of Usenet, which was already going away. It was already getting kind of overrun with spam, and it never really moved to the web properly.
And that's an example, Usenet, of an open platform not working and the web being an open platform that did. What do you think the difference there is? Why did that die on the vine and the web is still strong?
All kinds of complicated reasons, but Usenet really was using pretty much anything that wasn't using the web protocol eventually went away, and they never really made that transition totally. I guess Google Groups is sort of the
equivalent.
where Usenet lives on.
Yeah.
It was non-centralized. You could think of being non-centralized as a strength, but it also opened it up to enormous amounts of spam.
It was amazing.
And,
Just like overnight, it became a disaster.
Yeah.
But there used to be
pretty quickly.
so many good Usenet groups with high quality people in them.
Oh, it was absolutely amazing. I mean, when I was in college, so this is like the late 80s. It was a great place to learn anything.
Yeah, I mean, from the Grateful Dead to programming. So, when did Stack Overflow launch, and when did you realize this was going to be a huge hit?
So we launched August 2008. We started working on it in April 2008, and Jeff Atwood said this is going to take 6 to 8 weeks. It took double that. That became a joke inside the company. 6 to 8 weeks is how long everything takes.
Right. But it really means 3 months.
Well, in this case, it did.
Yeah.
Sometimes it means
So you
never.
get the minimal viable product out in 3 months.
We got a bit more than a minimum viable product.
Yeah.
And
A good enough product.
I remember Jeff Atwood. I was the week they launched. I was on vacation in Israel, and the only way I had access to the internet was on a Nokia E71 phone. It had a little tiny keyboard and a terrible mini Opera browser, and he said, "Okay, it's launched." And I said, "Oh, cool! I got to check it out." And I'm sort of struggling with this horrible little web browser to type in a question that was the last programming problem I had faced. It's a very specific programming problem, and I'm typing it out, and it says, "Oh, did you mean this?" And then it shows me a list of other questions that had already been asked. And one of them, the first one, was the exact same question I was about to ask. So I'm like, "Oh, cool! We've only been open for like a day, and somebody's already asked this question." And I go in there, and there's already multiple answers on it, and there's already been voting has already taken place, and the best answer has already been voted to the top.
Wow.
So pretty much
Aha
right
moment.
away. Yeah, like right away.
Now-
And I remember calling up the team and saying, "Look, you guys, this thing is going to be bigger than Slashdot." I remember
Sure
saying,
enough.
this is going to be like, and they didn't believe me. I said, "This is going to be like something every programmer uses."
Now, you go and raise venture capital, which is something that I think it's a little outside your DNA, but you gave it a lot of thought. I remember at the time you sort of discussed it publicly, and you wound up raising
on this very show.
On this very show, and you raised venture capital, something you were reticent to do at the time. How has that worked out, and why were you reticent? Just to refresh the audience.
Well, essentially, and I've given much more detailed talks, but there's a lot of stresses that open up when you raise venture capital, where there becomes a misalignment between the founders and the
take us
the
through
VCs.
those.
So I think the biggest problem is that essentially a VC, and they'll tell you this, has got a portfolio of companies that they're investing in, and they want to see big bets because essentially they only need one or two of the companies in their portfolio to really succeed big. But they also need them to strive for that $1 billion exit because they're going to need, the one or two Tumblrs, Zyngas, Twitters.
You need a Tumblr, Zinger, a Twitter, or in Fred Wilson's case, all three. And a Foursquare to boot.
And a Stack Exchange. You need one of those in your portfolio.
Let alone if you have five.
But normally you kind of hope for maybe one or two to return the portfolio, and then maybe 3 or 4 that sort of make some profit, and the rest of them just sort of die. You don't really care. And you can't have a bunch of cautious entrepreneurs that are kind of locking in small gains, which is what an individual entrepreneur will tend to want to do. Is try to say, oh wow, I figured out a way to make this a $5 million a year business, and I can keep all $5 million of those dollars. This is amazing. I'm stopping. And that sounds like a much better outcome than a 1 in 1,000 chance of boom, I got $1 billion and I'm out of here. But the investor wants you to take that 1 in a billion chance. So that's sort of the first problem that you immediately have.
Portfolio versus individual. And how did you reconcile it? Did you just say, hey, Fred, listen, this is my concern?
Well, personally, none of the stakeholders in Stack Overflow were me, Michael Pryor, the other owners of Fog Creek Software, and Jeff Atwood, my co-founder. And all of us sort of saw this as, we got to go big or go home anyway. That's the way we saw the company.
So you were aligned in that way.
Yes. And we also had kind of a backup plan, right? Like I've still got Fog Creek Software going on the side.
Is that a negative to the VC that you have this other business that can pay your rent?
Some of the VCs thought it was because I hadn't burned sufficient bridges, or they thought I would be distracted. And they're kicking themselves for not investing at this point.
What's the number of uniques you get per month now? I know it was broke 10 million uniques long ago.
No, it's about 40 million global monthly uniques.
Wow. And the majority are on Stack Overflow. A lot on the server.
It's about half and half. So if you look at Stack Overflow itself is 20 million global monthly uniques, and the Stack Exchange, the network, server fault, et cetera, are probably about another 20 million.
You made a bit of a gamble on letting people create their own exchanges for knowledge and questions, and at some point you decided that was not working. You needed more critical mass, and you rolled that back.
Exactly. That was our one pivot. Our one pivot was that.
Well, it sounds like an iteration or something.
I guess pivot now means like completely 360 degrees.
Yeah, I think pivot means like kill and start over, a reboot.
It's supposed to be pivot, right? Like we keep most of the things the same, and you just change one.
Right. So I guess it is a pivot, and then most people refer to reboots as pivots.
Yeah. Let's go with, I'll just tell the story. We knew that we wanted there to be thousands of different Stack Overflow-like sites, or what we called Stack Overflow knowledge exchanges, or Stack Exchanges for short, on lots and lots of different topics. And the only question was how to get there. And so the first attempted idea was, hey, we got the software that creates this great community. Let's sell it. And, software as a service, we'll charge a monthly fee. Anybody that wants to can come along, borrow our software, try to make their own community.
Startups.com, whatever.
Yeah, that's right. There was answers done on startups.com, which Dharmesh and Dharmesh Shah and Jason Cohen built. There were a whole bunch like that. Math Overflow was sort of a big famous one that was very successful. So some of them worked, but it was a very, very small number that worked. In the meantime, we saw open source projects appeared, sort of overnight, to try to replicate the software. And they weren't nearly as good or as deep as what we had, but at first glance, you never noticed that.
Yeah.
And so the actual value we discovered wasn't really in the software. And what we discovered is that the people that were licensing the software to try to make their own communities were, for the most part, failing to build communities that got any kind of critical mass. And that was sort of the aha moment, was like, oh crap, it's not the software that makes this work, it's critical mass. It's like what you need is the audience of people. And we had a lot of data, and we could tell you, I need 200 people to sign up and get really active and engaged here, or the site is not going to work on average.
And 200 was the number?
Approximately, yeah. I mean, it sort of depends on the site and how broad it is.
200 daily, weekly active users, whatever, 200 email addresses?
200 actual registered users that have used, something. It has to be 200 people that have used our network, and so they've sort of proven that they will read questions and sometimes write answers or write questions. So like people who type, 200 people who type.
Now, you also had a tremendously disruptive advantage in that you never intended to make money directly from the Q&A service. You had another idea of how to make money.
Right.
When we get back from the commercial break, I want you to explain to everybody what that amazing idea was.
All right.
The secret revenue. You like that little cliffhanger?
Yeah.
That's
when we come back.
Joe, that's called professional podcasting. See, Joel's an amateur podcaster.
We don't have ads on our podcast.
No, it's all one big ad for Stack Overflow. Hey, let me thank my sponsors, and we'll be right back. Oh my God. Audible is back as a sponsor on This Week in Startups. This is my dream come true. As many of you know, I've been using Audible for years. Long before Amazon.com bought them as a company, I have been an Audible fan. In fact, I have my Audible open up right here. I just, even before I knew that they were going to be a sponsor, bought like 4 or 5 books. And I bought the Checklist Manifesto because I heard that Jack Dorsey from Square and Twitter gives that to all employees. I bought the Willpower Instinct because it was on the homepage and looked good. I bought the Charisma Myth because it was on the homepage and looked good. I bought Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg because I have to know that because Kieran Callier, who's the editorial director, is like, you need to read this book. And she's like, I'm going to buy you the book. And I said, don't buy me the book. I've got the audio book ready. I drive my car. I get in the Tesla. I connect by Bluetooth and I listen. And I listen and I learn. Some of you listen to this show to learn and then, hey, this show ends. And then what do you do next? Audible is what you do next. And you can get all these amazing books. And, you don't just have to get audiobooks about making yourself better. Like here I have Influence and, but I got this The Man in the High Castle, which is by Philip K. Dick because I like science fiction. And I got this Domain of the Dead, which was a highly rated zombie thing because I'm into zombies. I buy, and here's from Neil Stevenson in my collection, I have 145 titles. As you can see, I have 23 credits available. That's because I buy the platinum every year. That's an investment and a gift to myself. It costs about $200, but it's 23 books. And then I have all these credits and I can just shop. And I just look at it like, hey, if you went to one personal trainer session, which I've been going to, it's we're getting back in shape here. I'm getting a little bit thinner, but it's like two personal trainer sessions, or like what people pay to go to the gym for 2 months. This is the gym for your mind. Invest in yourself. Get an Audible Platinum. I don't even know what they want me to read in the ad copy because I don't need ad copy for Audible. I love Audible. Oh my God, Audible. This is the easiest ad read, but hey, you can automatically sync between audiobooks and the Kindle. That's a new feature. I don't actually use that one because I do it when I drive. I'm an LA guy. But if you were a New York gal, you might be on the subway and that might be very appealing to you. And just for our audience, you can get a 30-day trial. Audible.com/twist. 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 Go ahead and sign up and you will be able to download a free Audible audiobook. And hey, why not choose James Altucher, who's been on the program many times, choose his book, which is Choose Yourself. Be Happy, Make Millions, Live the Dream. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you to get that book, Choose Yourself, Be Happy, Make Millions, Live the Dream by James Altucher, who's been on the program so many times. And we have an Audible iPad contest. Simply join Audible and forward your email to audible@launch.co. Just forward your email to audible@launch.co and you'll automatically be entered to win an iPad mini signed by me at Jason. And let me tell you something, the iPad experience is extraordinary for Audible. It's just beautiful. And they have all these great things. You can speed it up a little bit because sometimes the narrators, they have great narrators by the way, but sometimes the narrators are a little bit slow. So I like to go 1.25, 1.50, and then it syncs it across multiple devices because sometimes on my iPad on a plane, because the iPad lasts forever, right? You don't want to drain your phone, so I take out my iPad and I just listen to Audible on my iPad. Sometimes I'm listening on my phone. It remembers what spot I'm in. You can take notes at certain spots. I take notes during the thing. You can rewind a quick 30 seconds. There's all these great features in it. The app is extraordinary, and it keeps track of where you're at. I love Audible. You will love Audible. And you can thank them, Audible_COM on your Twitter handle. 100,000 titles in every genre. Oh, it's so great that Audible's back on my program. audible.com/twist, audible.com/twist, audible.com/twist. Sign up, please, and forward your subscription, your sign-up form to audible@launch.co. Let's get back to this great program. Thanks, Audible. Okay, so when we left our hero,
Sorry.
Oh no, it's quite all right. This is a podcast. When we left our hero, Joel Spolsky, you had gotten some critical mass. You figured out, hey, 200 members, you can make a vertical work. You shut down the, software as a service opportunity. It's just too hard to make it work. And you focus in on critical mass. But let's talk about revenue. So
okay.
We all agree that was the right move. But how do you make money with all of these really smart people all crowded in one, great big knowledge party?
Volume. No, just kidding. So that was the one, and I can honestly say now that was the only secret that we had when we were founding it, which is that essentially, all right, so at the highest level, the most theoretical level, when you have an audience of experts in something, you can usually find a way to make money off of access to their attention. And we do that in two ways. One is the advertising, which is very visible, and the other is the job service, Stack Overflow Careers, which is a little bit less visible. And Stack Overflow Careers, essentially we have an awful lot of programmers. We have the attention of all the world's programmers. Like literally, I have not, it has been years since I met a programmer that does not use Stack Overflow regularly.
Right.
And I don't think, and I'm willing to, if anybody wants to challenge me on this, I'd love to hear it, but I don't think there is any other product in the world where you can buy that attention asset of all the world's programmers. You can get a lot of them.
And what does that mean to an advertiser? I mean, what kind of CPM does that come at? $100 CPM or something?
No,
crazy?
it's not. You can't really think about it in terms of CPMs, but we do think about it in terms of job listings and career service.
What about ads?
You
do have ads on the top.
We do run ads, and they're not super expensive, but that's partially because we have an awful lot of inventory. But I think our rack rate is probably $7.50 to $10 CPMs. And then there's some kind of...
Are people lined up? Is that selling out, or is that just like self-serve, like tiny business?
No, we do have a sales force. It is a business that never seems to give up. I keep thinking that it's eventually going to be eclipsed by the job listings, but for whatever reason, every month we just do better and better and better on the advertising.
And what do you attribute that to, that the advertising keeps growing?
Just more and more recognition that if you want to reach a diverse audience of programmers, there's really no other place to do it anymore. You remember there used to be magazines for programmers? You would go to Barnes & Noble and there would be C++ magazine and Linux magazine and all that kind of stuff. Those are mostly gone, and that's because the total, this is just not a big market. Advertising to programmers is a tiny market, I think. Jobs, on the other hand, and careers and trying to hire engineers is we think, a large market.
I was just putting out ads, or I put in my email newsletter that I was looking for 3 key positions for Inside.com, the project I'm launching in the fall. And one of your people got back to me in the first 24 hours and said, hey, can we get you some ads on the site? Maybe we'll even do it gratis, as we know Joel's your boy.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, oh, that's very nice of you. What do the ads cost, and how does that work? And how much does that generate? Tens of millions of dollars? Millions of dollars?
Well, we don't reveal any.
Oh, you're not up to that
numbers,
yet.
But the ads are $350 for a job listing.
So it's kind of reasonable if you're hiring a $100,000 programmer.
Yeah, and it's pretty competitive with what else is out there. I think we tried to set the price so it would be a little bit higher than everything else that was on the market.
Why is that?
Because just, absence everything else, people will look at the price and assume that that's kind of an indicator of the quality, right? Like if you don't know any better, when you go to buy a hair dryer at Ricky's, there's 19 kinds of hair dryers, and you might guess that the $100 hair dryer has got some magic vavoom that the $25 hair dryer doesn't have. Because you don't know anything about hair dryers, and you don't have Consumer Reports with you.
Right. And so this business is really chugging along, and you've been kind of quiet about it a little bit, just silent juggernaut, huh?
But we don't have to advertise. We're a private company. We have the luxury of not having to talk about.
Did you ever raise a B round, or I can't remember?
We raised an A round publicly. We raised a B round somewhat publicly. That was more like a follow-on to the A round. That was one of these. I would like to invest at double what they invested at. And so we said sure. We raised a non-public C round, which we don't disclose, and we don't have to because does not involve California. Apparently, if you raise money,
it'd be public.
Kind of complicated. Like New York companies are allowed to raise money.
without filing those forms, Reg Ds, and all that kind of other nonsense. So you do have a C round. So the company's done fabulous. What do you think the outcome will be for it? I mean, is this something you think will go public eventually, or you sell, or you just want to keep running it indefinitely?
I do not know, but it is.
I mean, you still control it, I would assume. You and your partners still have control.
We still have control. We have the common has 3 out of 5 of the board seats. So
how do you look at it? I mean, we talked before about the venture capitalist dynamic where they need to get a return. You're now in year 6 of this adventure. It's getting close to that time where they probably want to know what's going to happen, right? 7 years they want to know, 10 years?
Year 4, I think. And we got a few more years, and I think we're kind of tracking nicely to where we need to be. So I think we're not really one of the problem childs for problem children of our VCs.
Is your goal, do you have a personal goal of going public with it, or you think you just grind it out and just keep building the revenue? What do you think about going public, that whole process? Is that like something like as an entrepreneur you've always dreamed of doing?
I can't say I dream of it. It sounds sort of like a headache. There's a lot of good companies that I respect a lot that have gone public with nice revenue. Well, Zillow, LinkedIn.
Yeah.
These are companies
solid, stable.
Yeah, they're solid. They're just killing it. They're just doing fine. They're leaders in their space. There's no real sort of flashiness about them. They don't need to make a lot of noise. And I don't think there's anything about either of those companies that's a fad, or temporary.
No, far from it. I mean, it's not like they have that like Facebook, oh my goodness, maybe people will switch off of this.
Yeah, exactly.
Onto Tumblr or something, like that sort of, what would you call that risk?
One of the things about a company like, let's say Tumblr or Zynga, Tumblr and Zynga are competitors of each other because they're because it's just an entertainment app. And all entertainment products compete against all other entertainment products at any given time.
Whether it's movies
or a game or whatever, they're all competing against each other at all times. And but if you want to hire a Ruby programmer in New York, there's 3 or 4 places you can go to find all the Ruby programmers in New York.
And you're probably going to use 2 of the 3 or 4.
Yeah, you probably use them all. Actually, that's the great thing about selling job listings is that everybody buys 10, on all the different outlets.
In a hot market.
Yeah.
And interesting. Now, LinkedIn's very interested in your company. Well, why wouldn't you sell to LinkedIn?
I don't know that they're interested. Did they say this to you?
Yeah, LinkedIn seems to be... No, LinkedIn seems to be...
Seems to be a good fit.
Well, let's just say, I think that as you expand into job listings, the job functionality, and if you were to go to a technical recruiter and said, you can only have one, I think that an equal number would say Stack Overflow, Stack Exchange, as they would LinkedIn. Would you agree with that?
I hope so. For a technical recruiter, that's certainly the case.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
If there's any population that doesn't like LinkedIn and doesn't like social networking, it's the programmers. They're just sort of...
Why don't they like it?
I don't know, because it's salesy and smarmy and marketing-y and whatever.
Yeah, so probably 2 out of 3 would pick...
The programmers would certainly pick Stack Overflow careers over LinkedIn in general. Certainly the good ones would be inclined to that. The technical recruiters don't know yet, but they're discovering this. Did
you have like a $5,000, $10,000 seat like application for tech recruiters?
Yeah. But no, they can't be. The only thing is we don't deal with contingency recruiters. So contingency recruiter is the kind of spammy recruiters that programmers hate. So we just... Why
is there that aversion to contingency? I mean, you hear that when I say contingency recruiter, you see a lot of like developers like,
They don't. So there's 2 kinds of recruiters for the audience that hasn't heard yet. A contingency recruiter is essentially, let's say a company needs to hire a programmer. They'll go to 10 different contingency recruiters and say, I'm hiring programmers. If you get me one, I'll give you $5,000 for anybody you find me or more.
Yeah. Sometimes 25% of their salary.
It could be. Yeah. It could be.
$20,000.
I don't actually. With contingency, it's a little bit less than it is with what's called a retained recruiter. But yeah, and these guys will just go out and randomly spam in hopes of hopefully getting somebody maybe.
A body shop, a bounty hunter.
Yeah, they're essentially. It's very much if I send out 1,000 emails and 2% of them respond to me, and 1 out of 10 of those is actually good, then maybe hopefully I can get one person. And so obviously they're spamming, and that's why programmers hate them, and they don't know anything about programmers. They're very retained recruiters. Essentially, a company needs to hire a programmer. They go to the retained recruiter and they say, "You're going to hire me this person. I'm not going to use any other recruiter, and I guarantee you will get paid, and I guarantee you will fill this position. I'm not going to anyone else. It's not whoever succeeds. It's just you are working for me as my recruiter on my behalf." The difference for us is that the contingency recruiters will not reveal the name of the company that is doing the hiring. And they won't do that because they're afraid that people will go directly around them to that
Sure.
company, and they won't get their fee. So they can't. They have to say, come talk to me first, and then maybe I will allow
Which
you
is
to be.
inefficient and annoying.
Inefficient and annoying to the
On
programmers.
top
and-
of the
yeah.
spamming.
Yep. So they're
it's
like,
like
I have
double
this great
annoying.
opportunity, and then they get introduced to their own boss, or they get introduced to somebody that they've already interviewed at and they hated, or it's some
Yeah.
company that makes bombs or that they drop on children in
Yeah.
foreign countries. So those, we just have a rule that all recruiters on our system have to reveal the company that they're recruiting for. And that eliminates contingency recruiters, and that makes everybody happy, and that raises the
You do see
quality.
LinkedIn starting to assess skills. That seems to be a good move on their part. Is that something you guys have
I think
started
what
to build
LinkedIn-
out? Because I can see on your site.
Well, that's where we start, is
Yeah.
assessing your skills, right? We know right away how many questions you've answered and how they were voted up and what skills you're good at. And even if you never use our site, we can see by the questions that you're looking at, like you came in through Google, you're looking at a pretty advanced Ruby question. We could show you a different ad, a different job. We know your IP's geographical location. We know that this is a question about Ruby, and then it's kind of advanced. And
so
I
you're
can show
an
you a
elite
different
New
ad.
York Ruby developer.
Then I show somebody that came in from Denver who is a
Yeah.
Visual Basic novice.
Interesting.
So,
What do you think the state of developers is today, vis-a-vis that massive amount of demand there is today, and people trying to catch up with that demand? Can we ever catch up, or are we just going to live in this era where there's just never going to be enough developers?
sort of hard to tell. I kind of suspect that some of it is just kind of the amount of money that's available in VC at any given time is sort of the amount of money that's available for developers. I don't really feel like, kind of what happens is that the VCs want to invest in companies and the companies consume a certain amount of, available developer skills.
It feels like it's getting very spread out, though, with the number of angel investments in small companies.
Right.
And if that continues or accelerates, can we ever keep up? Do you ever think there's going to be a time when this market collapses and then there's going to be no jobs for developers, and we'll have developers fighting it out for jobs as opposed to companies fighting it out for developers? Because I don't think either of us have ever seen it this hot for developers.
It was probably this hot for developers in 1999.
But not hotter then, or
About
as
the
hot?
same. Yeah,
About
it's
the
hot.
same.
Yeah, I feel like it was about the same.
So is that a sign of a bubble, or is that just a sign of a maturing market in your mind?
Well, let's see. I guess the definition of a bubble is when the prices are unsustainably high.
Are they?
No. I don't
Why
think we're
not?
over-
People say
think we're
developer
overpaying
getting paid
programs.
$150,000, $200,000 for some developers.
Yeah.
They're
It's
underpaying?
about what they got paid in today's dollars in 1999. I don't think it's really gone up that much. It's actually kind of surprising how poorly developers have done given the shortage. I think part of the shortage stems from the fact that the amounts they're getting paid are not correct.
What's the correct amount? You see Facebook and Google at
Well,
war
there's
for
some market
developers.
clearing price, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, Facebook and Google is a great example because, those are
What-
companies where people don't really want to go work anymore. They're not so exciting.
But they pay developers incredibly. So what would a
So that's
developer
the market
make
clearing
there?
price, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Or the investment banks might be a better example, where we're absolutely positive nobody wants to work for an investment bank as a developer, and so whatever the prices are that they have to pay to get people.
What are the prices? What is a senior developer at
Goldman Sachs,
Yeah.
$250,000.
Wow.
It's a little bit too high, right? And then you can take that same programmer and pay them $125,000 if you give them some meaning in life. If you give them something,
If they're
from
working for Stack
anything
Overflow.
on the Maslow
Etsy or
period,
something.
Yeah, work on something cool. Work on something that matters. Work on something that isn't just a way of making some bankers a few more $100. And all of a sudden, give people meaning in their life, and the salaries go back down to a much more reasonable level.
What do you think the secrets are to landing developers? We're sort of starting to dance around that, the meaning in life. How important
Yeah.
is that to developers?
It's pretty
number
important,
one?
but first you have to fulfill let's call it like Maslow's hierarchy, right? First you have to give them, you have to not hurt them. You can't hit them.
Right.
You can't hit them with a stick.
Hit them with the stick being...
Well, yeah, hit them with a stick or yell at them or whatever. Yeah, and there's sort of a whole category of bad things you can do at that level. Then there's sort of the Google and the Yahoo type perks. Well, let's just say Google, actually. The perks like the massages and the free lunches and all that kind of stuff.
Do developers make their decision based on that, do you think?
It sure helps. It matters, yeah. Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Because there's a debate about that. Like, does free lunch drive somebody to take a job or not?
At the margin, yeah.
At the margin, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Well, all right, so now here's the thing. It may not drive you to take a job with a company you don't care about doing a product that bores you. Like, I would not take a job doing a fantasy baseball league because I wouldn't even understand that.
Or Goldman Sachs for free lunch,
yeah. And then there's a certain amount of sort of like the high part of the Maslow pyramid, which is like, am I feeling fulfilled? Am I working on something I care about? Am I excited about the mission here?
Right.
Are we doing something that's amazing? Are we doing something that's helping people get better jobs? Are we doing something that's solving people's problems? Are we doing something that's simplifying their lives? Are we doing something that's helping people not be lonely? Are we bringing people together? Are we doing, New York is full of great companies like that, by the way.
Yeah.
That, have, even without having a social mission, go work for meetup.com, go work for Etsy, go work for Kickstarter. A lot of these companies
you can feel very proud of what you're doing.
Yeah.
I always say the test is when you show somebody what you're working on and what your company does, that's when you can tell if like they're proud of it or not. Do they tell their friends like, hey, here's what I'm working on? And boy, in my career, when I've had stuff that people weren't proud of, they weren't showing their friends, but when they did, they couldn't wait to show their friends.
Yeah. That stuff is, that stuff's awesome. And sometimes, sometimes in order to motivate programmers, you can sort of help them understand essentially why what they're doing is making the world a greater place, and may not be necessarily obvious right away what the kind of long-term vision of making the world.
Yeah, like if you look at Etsy, it's like we're selling stuff. It's like, no, we're giving people who are craftspeople the ability to
make a living,
and then do more of what they love instead of working at Starbucks.
Right.
Starts to feel a little noble.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Trello, time management, and these things. We had a little exchange. I've had all kinds of people tell me like time management, absolutely game changer for developers. I've had people tell me absolutely a horrible thing to do. I've had people tell me you need to have people who are willing to work 12 hours a day. I've got other people telling me you have to stop developers at hour 7. Walk me through each of these. So you have Trello.
Yeah.
Explain what that is.
Okay, so Trello is a product from my first company, Fall Creek Software, that I guess you kind of got to see it, but what you get is you get multiple lists, and each list has these little cards in it, and you can make any cards you want. You can put text on them, you can put pictures on them. You can assign them to people by dropping little pictures of people onto them.
Yep.
And then you sort of use this to coordinate a project with a group of people. And it can be used to coordinate a project in any way, but the easiest way to think about it is it's usually for some kind of a task list where the tasks have to go through multiple steps. So the card usually starts out on the left-hand side, and as it goes through steps, almost like an assembly line in a factory, you move the card to the right.
Yeah.
It's there's web, there's iPhone, there's Android, there's
like Pivotal Tracker. Some people use that product.
Pivotal Tracker is a great example. Looks a lot like Trello, but it's very specific to the software development team process. Trello is totally horizontal. Like anybody can use it. People use it to plan weddings. People use it to run their fortune cookie factories.
And there is an assignment of points in Trello or not?
Not really, no.
Right, you could do it in the notes or something.
Yeah.
So what do you think about this idea of, and I guess that goes under, do people consider that Scrum or when you assign point systems?
Okay, so there is this thing called Kanban, which people working on Scrum software development teams will use.
Right. Explain Scrum and Kanban, because I want the audience who doesn't know this stuff to understand, because it is very important.
One of the very, very trendy ways, all right, let's imagine, let me see if I can describe what we would call a Kanban board. And Trello, you could use Trello to make a Kanban board. Because it's got the same approximate shape. Or you could use a custom Kanban product, which Pivotal Tracker is an example of that. So imagine that your leftmost list, all the way on the left, is a list of things that you might want to do someday. And then the next list is a list of things that you've decided to do next. And the next list is a list of things that need to be designed by a designer before they can get implemented. And then the next list is a list of things that have been designed by a designer and need to be coded by a programmer. And then the next list is things that have been coded by a programmer but need to be tested. And then the next list is things that have been tested and they're ready to be deployed, but they still need to be deployed. And then the final list is a list of things that are deployed that the customers have. Right. So every time you have an idea for a new feature, you throw it in the left-hand column. And then every once in a while, you sort of, maybe let's say you vote on the things in the left-hand column, and the top ones you decide you're going to do them this week, and you drag them over to the next column where they need to be designed. Every morning, the designer comes in, they look at that column of things that they need to design, they take the top one, they design it, they create a design document, whatever they want to create, whatever the form is, whether it's pictures or HTML or whatever, and they drop it on the back of the card as little attachments. And then they drag it over for the programmers, and the programmers come in and they're like, okay, we got some stuff from the designer, let's work on that.
Yeah.
They work on those things and then they drop it over.
And it becomes wildly efficient.
Yeah.
If you got a good team who is self-motivated.
It allows the teams to sort of coordinate their own activity. One thing that's interesting is you'll start to see things piling up. So you'll say, wait a minute, the programmers have nothing to work on. The designers have 15 things waiting for them. We need more designers. It becomes very evident, almost as if you had an assembly line in a factory.
Right.
You know, imagine the Lucille Ball.
So this all sounds great.
Yeah.
And that's what every company does today, or almost every.
Well, this is reasonably trendy. Yeah, there's this idea in agile software development called Scrum, and in Scrum you do these things called sprints, and a sprint is where you grab a whole bunch of stuff and you say, I'm going to work on this for, let's say, 2 weeks or 3 weeks, depending on how long your sprints are, sometimes a month. We're just going to bite off a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to burn through it over the next few weeks. And we're going to use a Kanban board, actually, to keep track of that. We're going to have a little 5-minute meeting every day, stand-up meeting, where we're going to talk about the current status of things and try to resolve any blocking issues that have come up.
So it's nice and lightweight.
Relatively lightweight, yeah. People tend to get heavyweight about it at some point, but
they can overdo it.
You can get religious about even the most lightweight things.
Now, there's a point system that some people have chosen to put on these things, where they say this story, also known as a feature.
So they call the cards user stories, because it's like a little story about how the user uses the feature.
So these stories, like user logs in and can change their password,
right?
Whatever, or user logs in can add a friend, whatever.
Yeah.
These stories then get assigned a value.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever.
Yeah, you can use a value. You can use what we call t-shirt sizing, small, medium, large.
Yeah.
Just like that, extra large, extra.
And now that means like a half day is usually where people put them in increments, not hours, but half days.
You could think of it that way, or you could just sort of say, this is small, this is medium, this is large. And then, and then you can sort of use that to try to decide, we can bite off a bunch of small things, or we can bite off some small things, some medium things, and one large thing. We can't bite off a whole bunch of large things. That'll drive everybody crazy. So you can kind of use this to, now Trello doesn't really obsess about this. Our assumption is that's a side conversation that you have when you're trying to decide what to do. It's not something the app needs to.
I've heard that people will have groups score this stuff. So like the groups have cards, and let's say you were going with small, medium, large, extra large. People could all 1, 2, 3, and everybody holds up how much work they think it is. 5 developers on the team, and it's like medium, medium, medium,
fair enough.
Large, large.
If you're having any kind of debate over how large something is, it's probably a sign that you haven't designed it. So nobody is. If there really shouldn't be any debate over how hard these things are to do. If there is, it's a sign that you've come up with something vague like membership system.
Yeah,
and you haven't decided, is this paid membership? Are there multiple levels of membership? What if you forget your password? How much work do we really have to do here?
Yeah.
And
billing or no billing.
Yeah. And there is some upfront design that has to go into just figuring out what the scale of that feature is going to be.
What do you think of? You ever implement those kind of point systems and then?
Yeah, I mean, there's another thing that we've done, which is useful. Sometimes you're just trying to decide how to prioritize. You've got a list of 100 things that you want to do. What some teams might call the backlog. Like here's 100 things we want to do. All the things that we want to do we haven't started might be called the backlog. And when you're trying to prioritize them,
I heard Icebox.
Okay.
Yeah.
Never heard that one. But and you're trying to decide what you do. One technique we've had is get everybody in a room, give them all $1 to spend, and ask them to split it up amongst all the features on that particular thing. So if there's something you really want done, you might spend 50 cents on that thing.
Yeah.
And if there's a bunch of other little stuff that you want, you might spend 5 cents.
And that makes people feel empowered or like in control of their destiny.
I don't even care about that. That tends to reveal essentially how strongly people feel about which of these things are the most important and how much they're willing to spend on them. And then you can sort of assign prices to them. So you can sort of say this one is $2. This one is 40 cents. This one is based on how much work there is.
Yeah.
Small amount of work might be 5 cents. A lot of work might be $10. And, everybody decides how they want to spend their money, and you just kind of see, all right, which of these things are the most oversubscribed? Like this costs $5, but people only put 20 cents into it.
Okay, so let's talk about the next step in this, right? This is all a great process, time tracking. very controversial topic. I've heard one group of people say they will not run a startup company without time tracking.
Okay.
And then I've heard another group say I would never work at a company that has time tracking.
Right.
I've implemented it in companies and had great results with some people and terrible results with others.
Yep.
What did Joel's take on time tracking, if it should be implemented or not, and in what circumstances?
Okay, so boy, there's a lot to talk about here.
Yeah, because there's Harvest, which is a very cool app that does
Yep.
this. GetHarvest.com that we used. It had great success with writers on it, video editors, content people, marketing people, where they're assigning stuff to different projects they're working on.
And maybe they're more
projects.
willing to be told to do something like fill out a timesheet.
Well, in a way, it's a timesheet. Another way, it's time management. But then developers, you lose developers if you try to implement it. What do you think the difference is?
Might. Depends on the situation. All right, so there's a lot of different things going on here. Number one, the basic business problem is that if you don't know how long something is going to take, you can't make the right decision about whether or not there's a business case for implementing it.
Right.
So if your programmers are all saying that's going to take 6 to 8 weeks, and you tell them, great, then let's go ahead, and then it takes a year, then you just lost a lot of money and it may not have been worth doing.
Right.
You might have been willing to spend up to 3 months on that, but not a year. And now you just wasted a year's worth of everything.
So that's the pro of using it, is to be monitoring your expense.
So you do need, there is a real strong business case for knowing in advance how long things are going to take, instead of just, a lot of programs will say, let's just do all the high priority stuff first, then we'll do the next highest priority. And at a given time, we'll always be working on the most high priority thing. And, that might work, but you may make bad decisions about what to do and what not to do.
Does that typically work?
It depends. That'll work in a startup that's doing this sort of constant pivoting, lean startup kind of methodology, which is let's make a minimum viable product, let's tweak it the minimum amount, let's tweak it a little bit, keep moving.
Because you're so lean.
Yeah.
You talk about a 5-person team.
And you may really be, if you're a startup and you're making, the world's first human-powered search engine, you may have just no idea
what anything takes.
What you're going to get out of it.
Yeah.
Let alone what it's going to take.
Yeah.
So it might be kind of impossible.
Right.
Sort of on the so startups tend to be on the extreme of we want to be disciplined about how we use our time so that we're always working on something important, but that doesn't necessarily mean time tracking and planning. Mm-hmm. The other extreme is there are organizations for whom getting things done on time is extraordinarily important. And the two... Aerospace is
finance.
Pretty important.
Gotta launch.
Well, I was thinking actually of a lot of game development shops tend to...
they have to ship for Christmas.
They have to ship on a certain day for Christmas, exactly.
Yeah.
And they
got to print the CDs.
They got to print the CDs, and it's got to be 100% correct on the DVD.
Yeah, there is no room for error.
Right, because there's no way to fix it if it's... it's in stores, and kids are playing it on Christmas morning on their Xbox, and they... not all of them are online and can download the patch. So they have a very, very low tolerance for bugs, and they have zero tolerance for being even a day late. And that's a very, very volatile combination for programmers. Yeah. And in order to enforce that, you need to be remarkably prickly about every single detail of the schedule. You need to plan very, very carefully.
And everybody buys into that then, because they understand the reason behind it.
I hope so, yeah.
Or if they don't work for a company like that. If they can't handle that kind of pressure, you go work for a web shop.
Right.
Where dates can push.
And there are systems. There's one, if you search my website for evidence-based scheduling, it's a very, very disciplined and detailed system where you do time tracking, and we actually compare the time tracking results to your estimates. And so we can revise the future estimates doing Monte Carlo simulations in light of how bad you usually get.
What's a Monte Carlo simulation?
Okay, so let's say that I've got a whole bunch of things, and I estimate that they're all going to take 2 hours. So I say 2 hours for each of these things that I need to do. And then I actually go fill out my timesheets, and it turns out that this one took 1 hour, this one takes 2 hours, this one took 4 hours, that one takes 2 hours, that one takes 1 hour, that one takes 7 hours. All right, so the next time I say that a feature is going to take 2 hours, instead of just logging 2 hours on the calendar, we're going to run a Monte Carlo simulation where we say some of the time it's going to take 1, some of the time it's going to take 7, some of the time it's going to take 2, some of the time it's going to take 4. And so what I'll do is I'll rerun the schedule again and again and again in memory on the computer. It's all done by software.
Yeah.
And based on essentially what I'll do is I'll do 1,000 predictions of the future. I'll play the future 1,000 times.
Right.
And each time we'll base it based on how good you were at estimating before.
Right. So if a third of the time you overestimated, a third you were on track, well, that wouldn't work actually because it would be perfect. But if
no, it still wouldn't be perfect because what's going to happen is when you add it all up, No. When you add it all up, what you actually get is not a certain date, like we will ship on May 20th. You get a probability distribution curve that says there's a 5% chance we'll ship by this day, and a 5% chance we'll ship by this day, and a 5% chance we'll ship by this day, and so on and so forth. And then you can ask, so that gives you a curve on a calendar.
Right.
And you can say, well, we need to ship on August 24th. What is the probability? And then this algorithm will tell you 74%. And you'll say, why? And then the algorithm will say, well, because one of your programmers is really bad at estimating. And then you'll go back to that programmer and you'll get a good estimator. You'll get a good estimator to sit down with them. And you'll have the good estimator re-estimate all of that programmer's features based on their skills, which are better. And you'll get a much tighter band.
Do people do this that often? What percentage of people do this kind of level of diligence?
Probably about 10%.
I wasn't going to guess that.
Yeah.
What's it like to work for that kind of company that takes it so? Is that
the truth is, if you're doing it well, it should be adding about 5 minutes a day to your daily routine. It shouldn't be that bad.
But there is an emotional reaction to some people.
Sure, a lot of programmers are just like.
Okay, and why?
Because it's seen as bureaucracy, I guess. Yeah. And it's always coming down to, like anything else about motivating the team. If they understand why you're doing it, then they should have the same motivations as you do. And if they don't, they will be unmotivated. So a lot of times it's sort of a failure of management to communicate the reason there's a business case.
What's the number of hours programmers typically most programmers, or if there's groups of programmers, can actually reasonably code a day? This has been a
this
question.
Varies a lot. Yeah.
I know it varies a lot, but there has to be some best practice, because I have seen such divergent thinking on this. Where some companies like Facebook are forcing people and they look at the parking lot being empty.
That surprised me.
Well, no, Marissa, one of the first things she said is the parking lot, or people reported, she said, was the parking lot's empty. This is BS. There should be people here at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, or Facebook is known for all-nighters. Are those
that speaks
good?
More to the motivation of Facebook versus the motivation at Yahoo, by the way, than anything else.
Okay, but
the first thing that people are going to do at Yahoo when Marissa says that,
what?
They're going to stay at work until 9 o'clock. And what do you think they're going to do between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m.?
Play StarCraft.
Reddit and StarCraft, yeah.
So much so because
Obviously.
they have.
So now they're ruining their family life, and they're not getting any more work done. Great, perfect.
So what is the number of hours you think? 20-somethings, 30-somethings, 40-somethings, 50-somethings, whatever it is. The stamina to solve programming problems.
It's probably less than you think. I think on average, the average day, it's probably, if you could get 4 or 5 hours of solid concentration in the zone work out of people every day, they're going to be remarkably productive compared to any other programmer you've ever seen.
All right, so let's say 5 hours, but people are putting in 10, 12, 14-hour days.
Yeah, but it's
What's
not
going on
coding.
in those other hours, you think?
If they're trying to code, then their brain isn't working at full speed, and so they're not really being that. I mean, even if you have somehow forced them to not look at Reddit and to sit there in the code editor and try to edit all day long, it's unlikely. Now, I do want to say that this is a very, very broad generalization.
Sure.
And obviously, you're going to have 18-year-olds with incredible stamina who will just crank for days on end. And that may go in waves, right? Like you can get somebody maybe for a couple of weeks to really kill it and put in 80, 90, 100 hours for 2 weeks in a row.
What's the top percentile in terms of number of hours people can code effectively that you've seen?
I don't know if it goes by programmer.
Okay.
Right? So
what's the best performances you've seen? Have you seen people code for 10 hours a day straight?
Oh yeah, I've seen people code for 16 hours a day. I mean, you can go to hackathons and you can watch this for a day or two. But the question is how ruined are they going to be for the rest of the week, right? Or
their brains are fried.
Yeah. I really do feel like at some point the ability to sustain that level of concentration is a little bit like running a marathon. And so you kind of got to pace it out like a marathon, which is like say, all right, we're going to run one marathon a day. I mean, your brain is a big muscle, right? And you're working it like you're running. Right,
what do you think if let's put aside society's concepts of,
work. Yeah.
How would you design, if you wanted to get the optimal amount out of a program, would you have them work 4 hours a day, 7 days a week?
I would probably say, listen, the general expectation here is that this is an 8-hour day job. It's a 40 hours a week job.
Of work, not counting lunch, not counting breaks.
I don't really, I wouldn't even, I feel like that's too much detail. Right?
Okay,
right?
All right, so 7 or 8 hours of working.
The assumption here is, if you're getting your stuff done, we expect you to just go home for dinner with your family and then
Right.
come in the morning in a normal hour.
Right.
And not have to work on weekends. That said, there are going to be periods of intensification where we're going to expect you to stay late and kind of maybe work on the weekends. And that's going to happen when we're close to shipping something, or when there's a big push to get something done and just out and behind us, or when we're really behind on something. You're going to see one of those. And when that happens, we're going to then take it easy for a couple of weeks after that. So it's all going to kind of average out to about 40 hours. But it's not like a by the clock 9 to 5, everybody's in the elevator at 5 o'clock.
Right.
It's really more of a, hey, tonight I'm finished at 6 o'clock. Tomorrow I might kick off at 4 p.m. Because, I'm going to a thing with my family, or the
Right.
weather's beautiful outside or something like that.
Yeah.
And then, and I tend to just sort of look at the programmer's overall productivity and see if it sort of aligns with the amount of productivity I'm used to getting from programmers over the long run.
What do you think the developers at places like Google and Yahoo are actually putting in? When you think about it.
See, the trouble is that the real question is what are they producing?
What are they producing?
Right. Okay. So there's some programmers that are freaking amazing,
Yeah.
and you absolutely cannot believe how much they're producing. And there's some programmers that are honestly putting in 60-hour weeks, and you're getting about 1/10 of the value out of them. And eventually, you just let them go.
How do you know? How do you know?
Because of how much they check in, how much code they write, and how many features and how many user stories they accomplish, and how many bugs they fix.
So it has to be just really the secret is having great management.
You do need team level management that really understands, hey, this is a productive programmer. Yeah.
And what do you think the environment
It's
needs
hard
to be?
for the non-technical CEO
Sure.
to know that.
Yeah.
But the teams do sort of know. I don't work directly with anybody on my team, but they will come to me and they'll say, hey, we got this one programmer and he's just not producing that much. We give him something to do and it just takes way longer than we think it should have taken, or
And they just want that person out because they don't want to.
Yeah, because they're making up the slack for that person, really.
Yeah.
They want
I do
somebody
find
else.
that they self-organize that way in a really interesting way. Let's go through, before we finish up here, what you think of the performance of tech companies. You're pretty astute in this regard.
Uh-oh.
Let's start with
They're all
Google. Let's
terrible.
start with Google. Obviously, they're on a tear. They're at the highest valuation they've ever had, highest stock price. And you see Google I/O, and you see Android. Let's just take a couple of pieces of this. You see Android just having an overwhelming majority of the mobile market. You see long projects like self-driving cars and glass. And you see them dominating the advertising space, as it is. What's your take on Google's performance today?
Great company. I don't know. That's a big, broad question.
Yeah, we'll take each piece. I mean, when you look at Android, when you look at Google Glass, I mean, when you look at that company on a technology basis, are they the most innovative, best run company today?
Okay, boy. In so many ways, they're well run. In so many ways, they're not well run. I think Android is the Windows of the mobile platform.
Yeah.
Right. Meaning, there's all kinds of slightly different versions. You can always get it to do what you want.
Imperfect.
It's imperfect. It's insecure. It's this. All the hardware manufacturers put all their
Messy.
stupid stupid junkware, crapware on the desktop.
Samsung and Sprint just polluting the desktop.
Just like Windows. But it's cheap. And so it's mass market. And iPhone, on the other hand, is sort of the pure experience, and it's going to be much better. But, if you want, it's not messy enough, right?
Yeah.
So people used to develop iPhone first, and then they would port to Android.
Yeah.
Today, they're developing Android first because they can actually beta test, and they can put out an MVP, and they can iterate every 2 days without going through the friggin' Apple store on Android.
Yeah.
And then once they get the product cemented, then they go port it to iPhone, once
So go
they've
big
decided what's
market,
going
then
to
small market. Open
even
platform.
if it was it's open platform, right? It's because you can iterate so quickly because your users you don't have to go through the store.
Right.
You don't have to get through Apple's ridiculous approval process every time you have.
Do you think that's sustainable, their Apple's approval process? Or you think they're going to lighten up on that and have maybe like a developer button in your settings?
They, I don't know. It's gotten a little bit better. There are people that have these secret, they're not supposed to, enterprise licenses from Apple so they can push stuff out to their beta testers.
Yeah.
It's
Test flight.
It's hard to know with Apple whether they'll ever do the obviously rational thing,
Yeah.
or whether they always want to be the more elite.
So let's walk over
product.
to Apple for
Yeah.
a second.
Sure.
They haven't had a groundbreaking product since the iPad. What do you think the chances are they have a groundbreaking product again?
Well, one thing that's interesting to read is when you think about, whenever you read a biography of Steve Jobs, or even in one of the old biographies, right, before he came back, there was Steve Jobs and the Next Big Thing was an early biography of him and early stories of the idea of the toaster computer, which is just a commodity product. There's no disks, there's nothing you plug in.
Yeah.
It's just all your stuff is there. Everything is guaranteed to work together. It's a consumer, an end consumer product. It's the Whole Earth catalog. What was that thing called? The Whole Earth catalog. Computer.
Yeah.
It's the computer for the 70s hippies.
Right.
It's going to expand your brain.
Right.
You're just going to buy it in a fancy store, and then you're going to have this bigger brain. That's been the vision. That was Steve Jobs' vision from the beginning.
And mission accomplished.
And that was his vision of the Apple II. And that was his vision of the Macintosh. And I mean, when he was sitting there arguing with people that they shouldn't even put a floppy disk in the Macintosh, and people were saying, well, how the hell does anything get on there? And he's like, well, we'll put the good stuff on there.
Yeah.
And there was just no physical way to do it other than having a single floppy disk.
Yeah.
Because hard drives were too expensive. So he compromised for a while,
right,
for a bit, but eventually when he didn't have to compromise, that went away. And he didn't like cursor keys, so there were no cursor keys on the Macintosh. And somehow they snuck in the period when he wasn't there, and then he came back, and then we got back to there's not even a keyboard.
Right.
What do you need a keyboard for? What are we, secretaries? Yeah. And essentially, I think the iPad is such the ultimate expression of the Steve Jobs vision. And everything else was just the best technology you could get on the way to that.
Right.
It's hard for me to figure out what's next, right? Like the watch, no. TV, no. Doesn't make sense.
They're evolutionary, but they'll launch those.
Maybe because they've run out of ideas.
But
I mean, everything has been leading to the iPad.
And you think that's it? So what does that mean for the company? Do you think you don't think the watch would be innovative?
Nah, come on.
I kind of like the idea of going like this.
You're not even wearing a watch.
I know, because it's not connected to
cool.
my email and everything. I love the idea of a nice big wide one. I want more like a band. I want to look like Hercules.
So there might be.
I want a band.
Once we have this idea of like the software's in the cloud, and we're all just sort of getting our apps in different formats, from small screen to large screen. Then it makes sense to have products at different size screens, right? Like I wouldn't be surprised if Apple had a 60-inch screen that just had, the Apple ecosystem sort of built into it. Maybe they've got a nice little touchpad or something that you put on your coffee table. They might come up with something like that, but it's still going to be 5% of the iPad in terms of size. And I think just the way Apple was built, they're always going to be the expensive premium product, and there's always going to be a mass market, slightly junkier version down there in Android land.
Will we be talking about Facebook 10 years from now? You think that's like
that's hard to
faddy
know.
Or trendy?
Yeah.
Do you use it at all?
I do. I had to go out and get a whole set of new friends because I couldn't figure out how it worked. So I had to find a bunch of 25-year-olds and make friends. And now I can actually use Facebook the way it was intended to be used.
But do you get value from it? You find like you're on there every day? Or do you think this is something that becomes like a constant transient generational thing? Like one group used MySpace, one used Friends.
I think one thing that Facebook did is
Instagram.
They did really sort of lock in a set of older adults who use it in a way that they're not going to move so quickly, right? Like
they're locked in, You're not going to build your graph a second time, third time, fourth time.
It's not just that. It's that if you try to not put pictures on Facebook, you go out and you do something with the grandchildren, with your children, and you put them on something other than Facebook, then your parents are going to say, why the hell didn't you put these pictures on Facebook? Put them on Facebook. And you'll be like, no, I'm using
Google Plus.
Yeah. And then they'll be like, okay, well, if you want to come over to my house and show me how to use that, that's fine. Or just put them on Facebook.
Right.
And so there's some of that lock-in, I think, of the value of the social graph in one place, I think.
What do you think about Amazon? Jeff Bezos?
Best company in the world.
You really do think that?
Yeah, are you kidding?
And why?
They have a strategy that I don't think anybody even knows what the strategy is yet. Okay.
Do you think Jeff does?
Yeah, sure. I can tell you what it is right now.
Go ahead.
You don't want to do an ad, a sponsor ad or something.
No, there's no more ads. Yes, after we get back.
When we come back, the secret
Amazon plan.
The Amazon strategy is to constantly try to find the moving parts in the business and break them apart. And so if you have, let's say that you have an online commerce store that sells books, but that requires, for example, some disk space to operate that. Then you either buy the disk space out on the open market, or if there's some reason you can't buy it on the open market, you sell the disk space to yourself and also to everybody else. And you buy it at whatever the best price you can buy it at is. So you've now broken off the disk space from the books. You made two separate businesses, one that tries to provide disk space at the lowest possible price and to win that business, and the other one that does the books. And think of all the other things that go into books now. You need some warehouses. Those warehouses, you make them available to anybody. Or you buy them, whatever's the cheapest system, whatever's cheaper. So every single component of this, otherwise, anybody else would have said vertical integration, they would have this big monolithic system. Jeff Bezos just sits there, breaks off little bits and pieces of it.
Yeah, it's like fulfillment. Anybody can have our fulfillment.
This was the original thing was you can put an ad on our product page for a copy of Joel Spolsky's book, selling Joel Spolsky's book. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
You can advertise on that, and who's going to do that?
Nobody.
Anybody that has a book cheaper than we do.
Of course, yes.
Right? So somebody
who's going to
accidentally bought
take that
10 copies
approach,
of it or
Jeff
got a free
Bezos.
copy, or maybe
Yeah.
they have a signed copy
Yeah.
that they got from me at a conference. They're going to sell it on that page. They're going to buy that advertisement. And then what does Amazon think? They just got 25 cents for a page view. Awesome.
Right.
If they got that much off of you, and they don't have to go put a book in an envelope and mail it to you and deal with returns and all that kind of stuff. Fantastic. So they've done this repeatedly since the very, very beginning, and they now have 37 businesses, and everybody looks at them and says, these are unrelated businesses. Why do you have web hosting and servers and elastic storage and Mechanical Turk and 9 million other things that seem to be completely unrelated? And like, why are you killing it in all these single businesses? But it's just like, this is the new business model, is I'll take a vertically integrated thing. I'll start with a bookstore, and I'll just break off every little single piece that I can find, and I'll make them all compete as if they were independent individual businesses.
And he doesn't seem to be stopping.
There's no end how long you can do this.
Could you ever have guessed, I mean, being a developer and a developer advocate, that the most important cloud platform, would come from the bookseller?
You never would have guessed this.
And
but once you realize the way Amazon does things, this becomes evident. This is mitosis is sort of the system for inventing new companies. And what is Yahoo's system for inventing new companies? I don't know. I'll buy something really popular.
Right.
That's all I can figure out.
Right.
What is Microsoft? I don't even know. If
they bought some popular stuff. Yeah.
They buy some
Skype.
stuff.
Yeah.
They buy some stuff.
Buy stuff with critical mass. And
Google was like, let's make 20% time and people will do random stuff, and then let's eliminate the 20% time and we haven't had a new idea for a while.
Google X or whatever that project, special project that Sergey's doing.
I think I think a lot of it just comes from Sergey, right?
I think Sergey and a group of people saying, what is the moonshot? Yeah, they have
they're doing a few little random moonshots.
I think the moonshots are like, sometimes I think they're like, look at this, so you don't look at this. Like, here's Google Glass. Let's all talk about Google Glass. So that you're not talking about the ad business and YouTube.
Okay.
Which is 45% tax on every video that's played.
Right.
A 45% tax on every video that's been played.
Yeah.
And 1 billion people are using YouTube a month.
The ad business also is very good at taking 99% of the profit that anybody has in their business.
Right. Not only are they taking 28%, they're taking the 28% that is the profit.
Right.
So if you were to leverage Google's ad network as a media business, you're essentially accelerating your demise.
Well, this is the trouble, is that almost everybody, something about the auction way that the pricing works in the Google world has sort of tricked people into, sort of lulled them into a sense of complacency where you sort of tell a small bit, let's say there's a guy selling widgets in Montana or something, and he's bidding for Google AdWords to sell his widgets. And he's going to bid it up to the point at which he's really only making 1 cent of profit on each one. And he says, well, it's worth it because it's a cent I wouldn't have if I didn't run that Google ad.
Right.
But in any other business, he would have said, the price of these ads is outrageous and it's unfair, and I'm not going to do it because it's not fair, because I want to punish them. Right. He has to let me keep 50% of the profits, or I will not buy that thing from him.
Some vindictiveness, some like emotional response to getting screwed.
Yeah. And for some reason that doesn't happen in the Google world.
Because they don't talk to anybody. You don't know who to talk to. It's not like you're in a negotiation with anybody. You're in a negotiation with a dashboard.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do? Bang your screen and be like, oh my God, this
PHP
return
gets
page.
all of the profit that I can make.
It is, and I think it's really amazing that a lot, I mean, you have like...
So that's a good business, don't get me wrong.
It's an incredible business, and you have people like Rupert Murdoch, who sometimes seems like, crazy old guy who's anti-Google, but then you start looking at someone like Nick Denton, who's like, I will never run Google's ad network because they will suck the margin out of my direct ad sales.
Well, that's a different trap, which is the Google pincher on the publishers. We could talk about that for a while too.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
This has happened, quite a bit. Where I'll tell a story, and I won't name names, and you'll have to figure it out on your own.
Okay.
So somebody has a website that gets a lot of user-generated content. Let's say maybe it's question and answer related. Maybe it's not.
Okay.
Not my website.
Right.
And they have their own ad sales force, and their ad sales force sells ads, and they're awesome. And they're getting, let's say, $1 CPMs. And then one day they put a little, make a little bit of money off of remnant and stuff like that. They start putting Google AdSense on there. And they get the Google Content Network, garbage keywords that get sort of stuck on there. And lo and behold, those are performing at $2 CPMs. And they say, man, that's pretty nice. And they start putting more and more of that on. And they say, why do I even have all these salespeople? Let's just get rid of all the salespeople.
And outsource it.
Outsource it to Google. I'm getting higher CPMs than I would have gotten anyway.
Yeah.
And they put a bunch of those on. Now, the Google AdSense people call you up and say, I noticed you've only got 2 ad slots on your front page. Why don't you make it 3 ad slots? You say, okay. And then they call you up and they say, I noticed that the Google AdSense has a smaller font than the actual text of your page.
Yeah.
Why don't you use the same exact font?
And color.
And
style. And remove the border.
Yes. And we'll do all that for you. We've got a special JavaScript newbie thing that we'll introduce to you.
Yeah, and we've got people who optimize. I've been through this.
Yep. And then you'll optimize all that, and boom, now you're getting $2.14 CPMs or something, and you're saying this is absolutely wonderful. And then, some animal named release comes out from the search engine folks.
Yes.
And your traffic goes down by 75%.
I've been there.
And you say, wait a minute. What the hell? Why did you stop sending me traffic? And then you call up somebody like Matt Cutts.
Yeah.
And he says, well, look at your page. It's garbage. It's all full of ads.
Right.
And you said, those are Google ads.
Yeah.
And your people in New York told me to put them there.
That's exactly what happened to me.
Really?
And Answers.
Okay. And Answers.
Yeah. And other people.
To 3 people, yeah.
And
It's happened to a lot of people.
Ehow.
Because you get in the Google pincher.
Stack Overflow.
No.
You never put the ads.
I would never put ad.
Yeah.
I would never put Google
This is
ads.
what I realized. Yeah, I think you're brilliant because you decided you would go your own way.
Yeah.
And you would route around Google.
Well, we still use
Google
Google. Listen, we still use Google as our front page, right? Google is our front page. When you type a question into Google, 90+% of our traffic is somebody who's typed a question into Google.
But you never let Google into the henhouse.
No.
And that was my big mistake. And that's a lot of people's mistake because you get a Google dependency. And then you want to know the crazy part about this?
Yeah.
What you described, exactly what happened to me. And I'm emailing people above Matt Cutts. And Matt Cutts sits there in a meeting with me. He's like, you don't have a Google penalty.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what should I do to get my 75% of traffic back?
Yeah.
And he says, maybe you should watch this video. And I said, Matt, F you, Matt Cutts. Like, I've known
Matt Cutts, by the way, is a great guy.
Oh, he's a super sweet guy. But you know what? I think it's like,
he will
I can't
actually
tell if he's clueless, a troll,
Since we mentioned him by name,
or a drone.
No. He's a wonderful guy, and he will help you find and fix your problems, whatever they may be.
Yeah, he will in a certain extent.
But a lot of times, he is honestly just saying, listen, this page, for whatever reason, is not a high-quality page.
Right, but a lot of times, I think they did that Panda update to make sure nobody could compete with them. I think it was nefarious. Some people were getting so big that they were like, let's just make it so instead of having 100-story buildings in our town, the biggest building could be 25 stories.
You're entitled to that opinion. I'm going to
disagree with you and actually say I think that the people in the search result quality team are actually probably reasonably idealistic.
Yes.
And they actually just think that Answers.com had some of the worst pages on the internet.
They did.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. But I also think that the way they went about it was too crazy. Like, why can't they communicate with everybody?
Well, that was another interesting thing, which is then you call up Google AdSense, the Google AdSense team.
The team that led you down this road.
And you say, why did you lead me down this road? And they're like, oh, I don't know. What's the matter? And you're like, well, but Matt Cutts said. And they're like, oh, do you know Matt Cutts? Can you
introduce me? It's a schizophrenic. This is why my new project Inside is email, mobile, social, and I don't ever want Google. I'm not going to put Google Analytics on it. I'm not going to ever put Google AdSense on it. I'm never going to have any involvement with Google again, because I kind of feel like once you let them into your henhouse, it just leads to ruin.
I feel like it's when they're sending you the traffic and then they're monetizing it for you.
Yeah.
That you really are sort of
But
pinched.
they want to give the answer to everything now. So have they started web clipping your stuff? And can people get enough of an answer from the abstract?
I don't even care if they do really that much. I mean, that would be fine.
Because you know they're going to still go through because the answers are not so short. It's not
I feel like
a flight or a box score.
Right.
Where you can just give the answer.
We have some pretty deep content now that they'll click through.
Yeah. See, like Yelp, movie listings, comparison shopping.
Some of the more trivial stuff.
Somebody's date of birth. I mean, Google just gives you that answer at a web clipping now.
They'll one-box it,
They'll one-box it and you're done.
Yeah.
See, I think this is Google's conundrum is they have publishing partners over here who they desperately want to work with to keep that 40% of their ad network going. But then on the search side, they're like, hey, we can just give that answer and you never have to go to Yelp. We can just tell you what the best Chinese restaurant is. Why go to Yelp?
Yeah.
And then Yelp's like, excuse me. It's an interesting company.
But I actually genuinely think that in that case, if they're doing that, they're doing it because they feel like it's a better user experience.
I agree. It just leads to this very schizophrenic organization where one group is calling you. Like, literally, the AdSense group called me. It's like, why aren't you publishing more pages on the web? I'm like, because of what you did to me in the Panda update. And they're like, oh. And they're like, I was like, but I'll create 1,000 pages a month with you. Tell me what categories you think I should do them in. And they're like, you will? I'm like, absolutely. Give me $500 per page as an advance. This is what I told them. Give me $500 a page a month as an advance against me paying writers. 100% will go to writers. You'll see we'll have open book accounting, and I'll spend $500,000 a month paying great writers $500 a page and put 100% AdSense on it until you recoup. And they were like, we don't do that. I was like, okay, then I'm not making pages for you anymore. And I'm not going to run your ads anymore.
Right.
It's just, they're an incredibly frustrating group. Why did you start me on this, Joel?
I'm sorry.
You're trolling me on my own show. You're trolling me on my own show.
I don't even know how I got into that. No, I wanted to tell that story because you may have told parts of it.
No, it is true.
But I heard it, and this was not the Mahalo story that I was telling.
No, it's answers.com, obviously. Your competitor, see, this is why I think you're a brilliant strategist, is Answers went for ad revenue. And let's face it, Google ads are predicated on deception. People have to...
Well, they certainly perform better if you're tricking people to click on something, just like anything else.
But that's what all the Google advice...
Yeah.
All the Google advice is how to trick your users. Google says, hey, number one, make it the same font. Number two, do this. And I did a study, like a user study, where I had users search on Google for something and then tell me, where are the ads?
Yeah.
They never really pointed to the ads on the right. The two things up top in the yellow, I said, what are these? They said, those are the top two results.
Yeah.
They pointed to the top two ads in the box.
Yeah.
They actually thought the box in yellow or the colored box were the premium organic results.
They, it's sometimes hard to tell.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're good.
Anyway,
They're not
whatever.
irrelevant.
Listen,
Yeah.
I think Google in a way is like, I think the Borg analogy is actually kind of accurate, which is they're just acting towards their destiny. You know, like the Borg's destiny was to engulf everything. I think that's what Google's going to do. Do you agree? They'll just be everything?
While. Well, all right. So I think, people are starting to learn that you don't always search on Google for certain classes of things. Right. So there's always going to be like, Google is not a good shopping search engine.
No, Amazon is.
Yeah. And sometimes even that isn't. Like, go try and find a leather jacket on Amazon.
Yeah, good luck.
Type leather jacket. That's not.
Although I'm getting better at it.
challenge,
I do Amazon Prime. Yeah, for that kind of stuff, yeah.
For a leather jacket, you really like the things that you might know. I was actually looking for a leather jacket. I knew exactly
Yelp
what I
might be
wanted.
better actually because a lot of people are like,
Yep.
I was looking for custom denim. I was like, how do you get a custom pair of jeans? Somebody was talking about that.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, Malik and Jack get these custom jeans made. I was like, so I typed custom jeans and I got terrible results.
Right.
I typed it into Yelp. Fantastic.
Yeah, sometimes because somebody's writing about that in the comments
Yes.
and stuff like that.
The review had it.
Yeah. So I think there's a certain amount of opportunity. Now, the truth is, if you're searching for a person, I search on Facebook. And the reason is because I'm usually searching for somebody that I'm friends of. I've been introduced to, I met them at a bar, I was introduced by somebody.
Yeah.
And I just type the first three letters.
And they're there.
And they're there
With their
because
photo.
Facebook knows that that's the friend of a friend, and I find their photo, and boom, I know who they are.
Yeah.
So there's certain...
LinkedIn, same thing.
LinkedIn, same thing at work, exactly.
And
Yeah.
you think that's what's going to happen for you in each of the knowledge fields?
There might be, categories of
You ever think
knowledge.
of blocking Google and saying, like, you have to come to us?
Oh, gosh, that would be...
Because Naver did that.
Stunning.
Naver did that where they
does
wouldn't
Naver
let,
do?
or
Yeah.
like limiting their abstract, telling them
Yeah.
they can't abstract it.
Yeah.
They can put the headline. That's what Naver did.
the
Naver
truth
would
is, I
not
feel
let
like-
any other search engines like Google index them.
I think that that's overestimating the leverage that you have in the marketplace.
Absolutely.
I think you just have to... Google is just gravity.
Yeah.
You just have to work around it. You can't invent an anti-gravity machine or build your castle in the clouds.
So, startup you respect most, or a startup that was most intriguing to you that you've seen in the last year?
Boy, wow, so many. Gosh,
What's intriguing? Go ahead, rattle them
I
off.
don't know. Wow.
Comes to mind. Who impresses you? Entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, or
You
new
have to-
companies or new projects?
You have to narrow it down a little bit more than that, I
That's
think.
something on your phone.
Okay, let me look on my phone.
Now, what on your phone is impressive?
What? Gosh, everything. Not necessarily from Google, really.
Yeah.
What am I?
You get Sunrise, that calendar app, Sunrise.
No, I'm still on Tempo.
What is Tempo? I don't even know.
I don't know. It's a calendar app. Yeah.
Check out Sunrise. That's a beautiful app.
Everybody's got like slightly different versions on the same thing. I've had fun with Vine.
Vine is great fun. I think Vine's here to stay. Path? You a Path guy?
No.
I love Path.
See, the trouble is that's predicated on having if I lived in Silicon Valley, I might have enough friends that were using Path for it.
But what's good about Path is like you'll
Interesting.
post very private things. So like if you
Yeah,
wanna,
but then you got to get all the people that you want to read the private things to be
Yeah.
on there too. It's hard to. I can't really point to any one particular thing that is just moving me.
what technology do you think
Tears.
is going to have the biggest impact in the next 5 years?
right now? Everything.
Everything.
How about I'm a bad person to tell you about the next. How about the last 5 years? I don't even know what technology has had the most impact on the last 5 years.
That's true. Cloud computing.
How am I supposed to figure out the next 5 years?
The cloud.
That's
a
true.
big trend.
Actually, that is sort of a big trend. Is just like sort of Dropbox everything. Everything's in the cloud. You were talking about this in the podcast. How it's sort of like you just move from device to device, and you just kind of hook it up to your Evernote, hook it up to your Dropbox, hook it up to your
Google Apps, and I'm done.
And you're pretty much done.
I literally now have I have both BlackBerries, the Z and the Q. I have two Android phones, the Note 2 and the Samsung Galaxy 4 is coming. I have the Nokia Lumina, like Microsoft One. I have a Surface. I have an iPad. I have an iPhone. That's like 9 devices, and I have the Google Pixel. I'll randomly bring those with me. Yeah. And I'm up and running.
Put your stuff on there. Yeah.
Never have to worry about anything.
You know, one of the things that I think here's something I'm willing to point out an app that I think is going to have a lot of impact on software developers, whether they know it or not, which is Google Hangouts.
Really?
Yeah.
How so?
Because the way to solve this incredible shortage that we were speaking of at the beginning of software development talent is to hire people wherever they may be in the world. If you don't require them to come into your office, you can hire far more people.
And just leave the Google Hangout up all day?
Yep, that's what we do. And
that's that?
Yeah, that's how we run a Stack.
Oh, that's so genius. See, this is the whole thing. If you make it to minute 67, you get this tip from Joel Spolsky. Google Hangout, and you stay in it the whole time?
We're not out of tape.
It's digital.
Oh, okay.
Joel, it's digital. They have memory cards now. That's it. Google Hangouts. You hang out on that all day instead of IRC. You can see the person.
Well, we have a chat room, but they just keep Hangouts open all the time on the various teams. And the truth is, one of the things that I finally discovered.
Creepy? Huh? Not creepy.
You can always close it.
Yeah.
You don't have to be there. But one of the things that we're discovering is the meeting on Google Hangout is better than an in-person meeting.
You're really, because you have your computer in front of you.
Because you've got your computer in front of you, you can paste a URL, everybody can look at it. You can show people stuff.
Right, that's what I'm doing. Next Scrum meeting, we're going to do Google Hangout.
You should. The most important thing, we finally learned this lesson, is you don't have everybody go into a conference room and then you got the TV over there with the one remote person.
Yeah.
Even if you only have one remote person,
everybody
if you do that,
that
person is like lost, you forget about them. You get everybody, no matter what, they go into their office, they put on their headsets,
and you do it.
And they do it online, and then everybody's equal, right? They're all sort of at the same level. You can chat. If somebody is not getting a lot of value out of the meeting, they're working. And that's fine.
That's fine.
Just ignore the meeting and go to work.
Interesting.
Just mute your microphone.
I love it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to try it.
And then you hire people anywhere. And it's just so absurd to try to hire people in one physical location.
I'm kind of getting to that right now. I mean, I am lucky that I got a CTO who was a fan of the show, really smart cat named Adam, who's moving to LA to be my CTO, and my product person is. But now he's like, I know the world's best X programmer. I know the world's best X developer. And I'm like, do they have to move? I'm like, no, they need to work. Yeah. They need to get shit done.
That's what it's all about. And people say to me things like, well, how do you manage people when they're remote? I don't know what the difference is exactly. I just don't get it. You either go up to them or you...
It's because you're a manager of tech people. If you're a manager of tech people and have a small team with a great manager, they look at the output. If you're doing what we talked about today with the Scrum and the moving stories along your board in your Combine. Yeah. Is it Combine?
Kanban.
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 Kanban. What does it mean?
It's this
Kanban.
It's that thing that Toyota invented for.
Yes. Kanban. Yeah, I know. So Kanban. If you do the Kanban thing, it's like, well, I can see how many points you did. I see what you got done, and the results are the results of the results.
Yeah. And if I need you to get something done, I'll call you up.
It doesn't work with other classes of employees. I've seen it with writers not work. I've seen it with video editors not work. I've seen it with creative people not work.
Yeah,
they need to be in a room. They need to be they need to clock their hours.
How many of the New Yorker writers are in
forget those. You can't get them out of the office.
Really?
Oh.
They sit in the office?
That's all they want to do is write. They just stay in the office, and then they go out at 9 or 10 o'clock, and they drink. And then I used to have one writer who was my best writer. He used to come in drunk. Or he'd be out to, I know he was out to 3 or 4 in the morning drinking scotch. Yeah. He'd stumble in at 9:30. He'd smell like he slept 3 hours, barely took a shower. I could smell the alcohol on his breath. But he filed. Yeah. I had a developer who was on THC lozenges for his anxiety. And he showed me, I was like, he had an anxiety problem. He goes, yeah, I saw my anxiety problem. He takes his hand, he's got a handful of Jolly Ranchers. I said, candy? He goes, no, they're special candies. You want one? I said, sure. I looked at him, I said, what is it? And it has like THC on the outside. I said, you're taking weed at work? He's like, no, THC. I'm like,
Yeah, that's
I was like, so I went to his boss. I was like, is he programming better?
yeah.
Yeah. Is there less anxiety? Yeah. He can like talk during the meetings and he's not like freaking out when we ask him a question. I said, carry on.
I got to get those in stock.
Keep THC lozenges and then people will be a little bit stoned. And then I was like, then I started thinking, is it illegal?
May not be as good advice as
no, it's not. But I was like, is it illegal? I started thinking like legality. This is how we live in the future.
Yeah.
Is it forget about moral, ethic, whatever bizarreness. Just strictly on a legal basis. Is it legal for them to be stoned at work? Is it legal for me not to have them stoned at work?
Yeah.
Like, is it legal for me to allow them to be stoned at work? Or is it illegal for me to tell them they can't take it in a state where we have medical marijuana laws?
That's right.
Because he had a prescription. It wasn't like he was buying them from a dealer. He was buying it based on a doctor's order. So if I tell him you can't come in stoned, I'm telling somebody with an anxiety condition that they can't take their medicine.
If it's a disability.
Of course it's a disability. So now it's Americans Against Disability. Americans Against... Unbelievable.
Okay.
That's it.
So Hangouts and pot.
Hangouts and weed. It's going to be a great future, everybody. The future of development with Joel Spolsky and Jason Calacanis. Thanks to our sponsors. Thanks to WeWork. Everybody follow at Spolsky.
Thanks.
Spolsky. Check out Stack Exchange. If you don't know what it is, you don't.
And Trello. Trello.
Trello. It's a great product. I started using it. And we'll see you next time on This Week in Startups. Bye-bye.